This is Marvin L. Storm with Business Exit Stories. We have with us here today Dave Kauppi. David, would you take a few minutes and talk a little bit about your firm and a little bit about where you're located and what your kind of unique industry specialty is today?
Thanks, Marvin. It's Dave Kauppi, Mid-Market Capital, and we are a technology-focused merger and acquisitions firm. So we help uh, owners of small software and information technology companies sell their firm. We've been doing it for 20 years, formerly from Chicago, but recently moved to the lakefront in Southwest Michigan, a little town called Grand Beach, Michigan. And we can operate from anywhere these days, so that's where we chose to.
Well, that's true. We do live in a different world as we're entering the post-COVID environment, and I don't think we're going to go back to the pre-COVID days. I think we're dealing with a whole new world out there today, aren't we?
I think it accelerated the adoption of technology by about 5 years. Old guys like me, we go kicking and screaming, but I think we were forced to do it.
So why don't we take a few minutes here and have you share a little bit about your pre-M&A career and how it led you to what you do today?
Well, I started my sales career with IBM and worked for their Service Bureau Corp division, and I like to call it the original application service provider. At the time, we had 9 mainframe computers in Cleveland, Ohio, and people would access it via a dial-in line with a 120 baud modem and pay $3, $4, $5,000 a month to use programs like Access or Excel. So, and we were actually selling to not the IT department, but to the functional business managers. I got my training there, which was an unbelievably good background to be in technology sales. IBM had the best training program in the world at that time. And I ended up going to, a software company. I worked in a datacom company. I worked in computer leasing with a company called Comdisco. I even did a chief marketing officer of a .com. And as you can tell, I moved around companies a bit. I had 5 companies either get acquired or go out of business. And so after the 5th one, I decided to change my career path and get into mergers and acquisitions.
Well, it sounds like a very robust training field for preparing you for a very kind of industry niche in the mergers and acquisition field.
Yes, I intentionally got into representing software and tech companies because it's really an underserved niche when you're talking about, $5 million in revenue software companies or $8 million in revenue IT services companies. The ordinary business broker who doesn't have a tech background doesn't feel comfortable in, trying to get strategic value for their clients that's beyond a multiple of cash flow. So that's the kind of arena that I've played in all these years, and I understand the leverage of technology and why you get some of these incredible valuations for software companies.
Mhm. What would you say are some of the personal characteristics and strengths that you bring to the table that have kind of supported and driven your success in this niche industry?
Well, I think, one of the things it's very difficult dealing with people that have run their company for years and years and trying to get them to actually listen to you. So, so building credibility with the clients and being patient and building trust while we're engaged. The business owner doesn't want to know we exist until they're ready to sell their business. So I'm building my relationship with the client live, on the battle line, so to speak. And in order to win his trust, I have to provide credibility and show him that I'm defending his value or her value and fighting for, every transaction advantage for them that I can. So that process, as well as just having this need to defend my client's value, because I think the deck is stacked against the guy that's selling his first company going against a buyer that's bought 36 companies prior to his, and they've found every trick in the book to extract value from the transaction, and I'm there to defend it.
What would you say your greatest accomplishment as an M&A advisor has been, as you've been involved this for a couple of decades now?
I would say being aware of sort of the change in technology that we have to use in order to represent our clients, and embracing that and being flexible enough to do that. I'll give you an example. I mean, my web guy, it was a part-time job because he had another full-time job, couldn't get stuff done for me quickly enough. So I went on to Upwork and hired a web guy from Bangladesh who's like a master's degree computer scientist at a very reasonable rate. I use a firm to do LinkedIn marketing for me. I have another firm that helps me with the producing the memoranda. So I've learned to kind of embrace sort of the business model that I need to have to be as effective as possible in representing our clients.
Do you do just M&A in representing your clients, or do you provide other services?
After skinning my knees a few times, I did finally offer another service that we call letter of intent consulting. So what would happen for my first 14 years doing this, someone would call me up and they go, I just received a letter of intent. I need your help. And I go, great, hire me and I'll throw them into the mix and we'll get you a competitive bid. And their answer is, no, I just want to see how this plays out. Well, prior to having an enlightenment, I would say, well, I'm sorry, I can't help you because we do M&A. Well, about 3 years ago, I decided, why am I turning these people away? I don't want them to go completely unprotected. So I launched a letter of intent consulting service where they pay me like a lawyer on an hourly basis. And I will help them respond to the letter of intent. I'll help them negotiate the letter of intent. I'll try and watch out for their interests, and they pay me an hourly rate. Half the time those deals blow up because the guy that's approached them with an unsolicited offer is trying to buy his house for pennies on the dollar. So, I prevent that from happening. And
so there's not another M&A advisor involved traditionally in that type of situation.
No.
They're just freelancing it and
Right.
trying to do it on their own.
Yeah, and again, I'm trying to protect the little guy from going to the dogs and walking into a letter of intent that just is so stacked and against him that he has no chance of getting the right value.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's interesting. What's kind of been your biggest learning experience on any type of deal that you've been involved in?
Whew. Unfortunately, there have been a lot of learning experiences, and a lot of times they're expensive. I'd say the biggest thing that I learned is it's on me if my client isn't prepared for something that happens in the deal. So oftentimes we'll go from one stage to another, and if we're having a corporate visit, I will counsel them on, okay, here's what you can expect. Or if they have a conference call, oftentimes people negotiate during those conference calls by being very negative. Gee, why did you do it this way? And my clients get off the phone call ready to have the knife up to their wrist. Well, they hated my company. I go, no, they're just negotiating with you to try and soften you up to get a lower purchase price. So there have been a lot of lessons, but I would say the one is make sure your client is prepared for all. It's a very emotional journey, and if they're not prepared, they'll respond in emotion. If they are prepared, they'll go, oh, I expected that.
Mm-hmm. What do you think are the three really important qualities that a good M&A advisor really needs to adequately represent his client?
I look at myself as a very highly paid and sophisticated salesperson. because what I'm doing is I'm selling a company. And what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to um, find the fit between my client and the buyer and try and create value there beyond a cash flow multiple. Um, I think being tenacious is another thing. If you've got if you in your mind, if this is the right buyer and you can't get to them, you got to figure out a way to get to them. And, that's sometimes not easy. It used to go from the secretary screen. Now it's the voicemail of the secretary screen. So, to try and get through to the business owner who's the decision maker to present your case on behalf of your client, you have to be tenacious, and you have to, it's like sales. You have to hear no a lot.
Mm-hmm. As a seasoned M&A advisor, what trends and changes do you see on the horizon that's going to impact the M&A world?
I think there are a lot of people that they're trying to digitize stuff and have marketplaces, and they're all helpful. But I think that the personal touch of making a connection with the CEO of the buying company and is still going to, in spite of all the technology, I think it's still important. But it's tougher and tougher to reach people. CEOs don't want to give out their emails anymore. The other thing that I would tell you is I've done a deal in, let's say, the MSP space, and I've created my database, and I had all these presidents' emails.
MSP, for those listening, what is MSP?
Managed service provider. And that is sort of the outsourced information technology department for small and medium businesses. But I'll do a deal, and I'll have 500 contacts. Well, I have their email, their phone number. A year later, I'll have another deal in the same space. I'll go back to my database, and 30% of those emails don't work anymore. Mm-hmm. So it's the industry is rapidly changing. People are moving. They're getting tired of their emails being full of spam. So they're becoming harder and harder to reach.
Well, if you could look back to your 30-year-old self, what would you tell? What advice would you give that person today?
Oh. You got to be passionate about what you do, because it's so tough out there. If you're not passionate about it, there are a lot of people that are, and you'll get left in the dust. So, my old boss used to say Kauppi had run through a wall to get a deal done, and I think you have to have that same kind of tenacity and approach everything that is meaningful to you with a lot of passion and heart.
Good advice and counsel. One final question as we wrap it up here today. What was the one thing that you would tell an entrepreneur, business owner, founder, that they should do to get their business ready for a profitable and successful exit?
I'd say I've kind of harped on it during this call, but the recurring revenue. So anything that you can do to take time and materials kinds of contracts to a recurring revenue monthly, time after time. Don't get lulled by one major client. Diversify your client base. Continue to reinvent your business to stay current. There's a wonderful book called Blue Ocean Strategy that I highly recommend. And an example they used in there was Cirque du Soleil completely reinvented the circus, so they don't compete with the normal circus. And boy, you buy a ticket to Cirque du Soleil in Las Vegas, it's $250 a seat versus, going to see a circus for $15. So they completely redid the business model to not compete with, the commodity type folks. So if your business is commodity type, turn it into something unique and competitive.
Okay, well, that's good input and good advice. Well, we'll wrap up here today. Dave, thank you for taking the time to share some of your background and your experiences that have put positioned you fairly well to represent your clients in this evolving and morphing world we find ourselves in here today. If someone wanted to reach out and get a hold of you, Dave, how would they do that?
My direct number at my office is 269-231-5772. Website is midmarkcap.com, midmarkcap.com. And I'm on LinkedIn. My last name is spelled Kauppi.
All right, Dave. Dave Kauppi, today we're signing off and hope we'll see you on the next episode when we learn more about M&A advisors and their backgrounds.
Great. Thanks, Marvin.
Thanks for listening to the Business Exit Stories podcast. For more information or to reach out to today's guest, visit www.businessexitstories.com for more details. Please subscribe, rate, review, and share this podcast from your favorite podcasting platforms. And remember, maximizing business value at the time of exit doesn't happen magically. It takes planning.